I'm Donna Fagan-Pascal, and I am the chair of the Brampton Board of Trade. And I am so delighted to welcome you to our first session of In Conversation with Leaders. As we start today, please join me in acknowledging the land we gather and our commitment to foster renewed relationships built on the foundation of mutual understanding and respect. The Brampton Board of Trade operates in the City of Brampton within the region of Peel. The region is part of the treaty lands and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land and other regions along the corridor. Specifically, we acknowledge both the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwe and the Chippewa peoples, and the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to you to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, we give our respect to the first inhabitants. As participants in today's event, we're coming together as one, and we believe everyone is free to be here, their true self, and to receive the same respect and opportunities regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you will join us all in fostering a positive environment to ensure a safe and welcoming space for all. Today, we are joined by Andrea Horwath, leader of the official opposition of Ontario. Over the next few months, it is our intention to meet with leaders of each of Ontario's major political parties in a lead up to the election scheduled for June 2nd of this year. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Brampton Centre, Sarah Singh, MPP, Brampton East, Guranta Singh, MPP, Brampton North, Kevin Yard. Before we get started, let me take a moment to point out some of the highlights of the platform that we're using this morning. On the left of your screen, you've hopefully already noticed and taken advantage of the networking and expo areas of the platform. You'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, the chat is ready and available for your questions and chatting. Additionally, you're welcome to ask questions at any time of Jennifer Oldman from our team who is on the line. Now, I would like to introduce you to Daniel Salvatore, Manager of Public Affairs for Ontario at CN Rail. Thank you to CN for being our presenting sponsor of this event, and let's welcome Daniel.
Donna, thank you for that kind introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned, my name is Dan Salvatore. I'm CN's Manager of Public Affairs for Ontario and Atlantic Canada. And today it is my privilege to represent the over 24,000 railroaders that service CN's North American network daily. I wanted to share with you some great news coming out of CN that was announced late last year, which is that CN now has in hand all required major federal approvals to begin construction on the Milton Logistics Hub. This intermodal facility will be leading edge, allowing for increased inland capacity for our intermodal customers in Ontario, in Brampton, and across our North American network. The movement of goods by intermodal remains 75% more efficient on greenhouse gas emissions when compared to trucks, and it removes long-haul trucks off Canadian highways. One train can take up to 300 trucks off the highway, and annually, CN's network takes 2 million trucks off of Canadian highways. Lastly, this new facility will alleviate congestion at our largest intermodal terminal, the Brampton Intermodal Terminal, and work in tandem together to ensure goods get to market safely and sustainably. I'm now thrilled to introduce the leader of the official opposition New Democrats, Andrea Horwath. Following her bio and introductory remarks, we will be joined by the Brampton Board of Trade CEO, Todd Letts, to continue the conversation. From her early career in community development to today, MPP Horwath has always believed that government should be about giving people the opportunity to build a good life, no matter where in Ontario they live or when this province became their home. Born and raised in Hamilton, Andrea was elected to Hamilton City Council in 1997, then as MPP for Hamilton Centre, elected in 2004. In 2018, Andrea led her party to become the official opposition, the largest official opposition in a generation. Today, half of the members of her team are women. They represent ridings from every region of the province, and together they're reflective of the diversity of Ontario. Andrea is a leader who believes in proposing positive solutions, especially when it comes to ending hallway medicine, giving seniors better care, and supporting public schools so they can give kids a great start. She's fighting for good jobs and a more affordable life. Andrea's an Ontarian, a mom, a Hamiltonian, and she's running for Premier this year. Please all join me in welcoming our featured guest, the Honourable Andrea Horwath. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dan, for that wonderful introduction. And I have to say, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm not going to make a huge introductory remark because I think it goes back to my roots in community development, but I really enjoy the dialogue. I learn a lot more when I'm not doing all the talking, and I certainly am looking forward to hearing some of the insights from all of you. I don't know if Todd was going to say a few things first, or and then we'll maybe go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Andrea. I should let our audience know that you were the first to accept the invitation of the party leaders, and we're so happy that you're here today. And you're no stranger to Brampton or the Brampton Board of Trade. Throughout the pandemic, you have been in touch. I remember our last meeting at the Brampton Board of Trade offices, and your deputy leader, Sarah, has touched base often, and we appreciate not only her care and interest, but that of your MPPs in Brampton that attended our provincial issues forum last year and do so each year. So thank you so much. And I will let the audience know that the conversation will cover things like pandemic recovery response, goods movement, our infrastructure needs in Brampton, and maybe some politics as well. But I'm going to let you, Andrea, if you have any introductory comments, please do so. But we're just so happy that you're here today.
Well, thanks very much, Todd, and thanks for reaching out. That is extremely important, especially considering where we sit, not only in terms of the pandemic and where it's taken us at this point, but also, as you identified, the Ontarians have a big decision to make in a couple months' time, and any opportunity to have a discussion about what's on people's minds, as well as what we see as some of the important pieces that that we need to do here in Ontario to rebuild and to make sure that not only do people have great jobs to go to, but that they have the systems necessary in Ontario to support them, as my bio said, to build a great life here in Ontario. I think folks will already know, I say this often, but it's absolutely the case that when I first became the leader of the Ontario NDP, which is some time ago now, as people like to remind me, I entered this position with a huge surprise, which was we literally had no relationship to speak of whatsoever with the business community on any level as a party. And as a leader, I found that really troubling because, of course, as was mentioned, I come from city politics. I was the councillor in downtown Hamilton and had significant relationships with not only the Hamilton Board of Trade, but with BIAs and other small business groups that thrived in our city in Hamilton. And so that I made it my business to change that, to turn that around. And I couldn't do that alone. So I want to say thank you to the Brampton Board of Trade, as well as just members of the business community writ large, because you've certainly responded as we've reached out over the years. And it's given us a lot of insight and perspective that I think is extremely important, and that has already and will continue to serve us well. And thank you also for acknowledging Sarah Singh, who's a wonderful deputy leader and does great work in Brampton. And I do want to just acknowledge off the top again, it's been tough. It's been tough for the business community. It has been really challenging. It's been challenging for everyone. And so Ontarians have really done their part. Unfortunately, we're seeing some really significant impacts on business yet again. And I'm sure we'll get into this conversation in more detail, but New Democrats believe that when something of this scale and nature hits our province, the government has a duty and responsibility to find the ways to support jobs, to support businesses, to support main streets, and if that costs us in terms of dollars, in terms of the public purse, that's exactly what the public purse is for. Because if we can make sure that people are supported and businesses are supported in the term or the short term. I don't even know if it's a short term anymore in the context of a global pandemic like this one. Then we know that will help our recovery to be a lot more swift and a lot more fulsome. And so this is why we've always been very much engaged with the business community in urging the provincial government to really invest in the necessary supports for our business community, because we want those businesses to thrive and we want them to be ready to be back up and running. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of businesses have shut their doors, particularly the smaller and medium-sized businesses, the SMEs, and that's not good for our economy. It's not good for jobs. It's not good for workers, and it's not good for Ontario. So on that note, I guess it's a bit of a downer note, but certainly didn't have to be that way. And I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of conversation about what we could be doing right now and some of the things that we've been pushing for as we've been through these last 2 years of difficulties.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for those introductory comments. And again, it's obvious your care for the business community, small business community. I remember our last conversation in our office, we talked a lot about not only the fiscal health of businesses, but the mental health of business owners as well. And here we are, the 14th day of January 2022. We're 22 months into this pandemic, fifth wave, fourth lockdown, I believe. There's a general sense of fatigue and bewilderment among Brampton's business community and perhaps among all Ontarians as well. And I'm really worried about the viability of many of our small businesses. They've been so resilient over the last 22 months. But to start off the year, as I say, it's quite fatiguing and bewildering. The provincial government announced incentives for business just last week again, including extension of the CEBA loans for another year before payment is required, a $10,000 grant for those businesses that are forced to close. My first question to you is, if you were Premier, what immediate financial relief would you be able to offer businesses and workers in order to bring some hope to the situation?
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that question. I think that first and foremost, it's important to acknowledge that the business community has been pretty vocal in terms of what their needs are, and so that's step number one. You have to listen to what businesses indicating would be the most helpful, and then find the way forward to provide that assistance. And so I don't know. I mean, it's not just this recent lockdown to for lack of a better word, but all the way through, business has been saying the loans fine, but a lot of businesses weren't in a position to take on more debt, weren't in a position to even qualify for more debt at financial institutions, and so the idea that that loans were an answer that was adequate wasn't what we were hearing. And of course, now here we are, as you've mentioned, wave 5, as some are calling where we are at this point. And of course, if that was the case last year, and in some cases, kind of near the end of the year before, it's even worse now. And what does that mean? It means literally we have business owners, and this is the mental health piece as well. We talked about how business owners have literally had to, lay off and say goodbye to close family members, to people that have worked with them for decades and were like family, and had to lay folks like that off and or shut down the business, and those folks had to walk away from their jobs. We know that there are many businesses that are intergenerational, that have been handed down for decades, that to family members that haven't been able to make it. And so from the beginning, my sense was, and it continues to be that today, direct financial help is the key. And that direct financial help has to cover off what's really happening to the business. So it has to be it has to be reflective of the scale of the business, of the the number of employees, the costs, the losses. So covering the costs or losses, I guess, is a better way to put it. Covering the payroll, like the true payroll of that business, the rent, helping with rent costs, because the revenue stream isn't there, and so these are the expenditures that have to be covered off. We have been talking about the HST and having that absolutely having that deferred. We've been trying to get the government to understand that one of the biggest expenses, and this is for individual people as well as small businesses particularly, is the cost of rent. And so making sure that that's covered off, but also preventing evictions from happening on a large scale. Ways to kind of prevent those commercial evictions from happening. Those are some of the things that we thought would be important, and we didn't sit here in Queen's Park and make them up. We've heard through delegations from business community that have come to various finance committee meetings and other opportunities that the government provided to hear from the businesses community. Problem is, we don't think that the message was acted upon, that we've heard all the way along. And this comes to one of the things that I just wanted to to kind of put out there overall. For me, it's about listening and paying attention, and then working together to find the solutions. And one of the things that I've heard often, like from day one, from the business community, is we don't like surprises. We need to plan. We need to know what's coming down the pike so that we can plan for the future. We do our business planning on cycles, and we can't be in the middle of a cycle and suddenly things change and we're completely unaware. Now, this is, of course, what the pandemic has done to a lot of businesses. But should we have the honor to serve as government in this province, I want to assure the business community that I get that, and that in order for businesses to have that stable environment, they need a government that's prepared to do that, have that engagement, and have that acknowledgement of the requirements around notice if changes are coming. And for me, it's about stability, and with having such an unstable couple of years now that businesses have been facing, stability, I think, is even that much more on the front burner in terms of what we need.
Yes, thank you. You make a number of good points there. You are correct that it is very difficult to plan, to forecast, to budget, to communicate to staff when they might be coming back and hiring decisions. You also made a good point about the debt load. It's maxed out for many businesses. I know that when we speak to Brampton businesses, they appreciate the cash, the grants, the loans that have been made available. But deep in their entrepreneurial hearts, they would prefer customers over cash. And specifically, what we see here now in this health crisis and economic crisis and mental health crisis pandemic is a paucity of data that would justify lockdown after lockdown, and to your point, no long-term plan. About a year ago, the Brampton Board of Trade said, why don't we look at the data, expand the tracing, the tracking, the testing, etc., and only lock down businesses where there is evidence that they're not complying or that there's an outbreak. This cycle of lockdown, slowly open, lockdown again, limited notice, it's really difficult for businesses to operate. And I guess my question to you is that if you were to form the government, what would you do to prevent future lockdowns?
That's a really great question, Todd, and I hope that we're going to be seeing the end of the severity of the impact of COVID-19 as we get through these next couple of months, but nobody knows, and so that's a very wise question to put out there. What I can say is I feel that people are a little bit frustrated that it seems like the government isn't learning from the various waves of COVID-19. They haven't been getting out in front of what might be coming next. And so here we are in really what people are describing is as rather the worst wave thus far, just in terms of the way that the virus can spread, the speed of which this virus spreads, and yet people can't even test themselves. I mean, everyday people can't. There's no access to the rapid antigen tests. In fact, I was watching the news this morning and people lining up by the hundreds at a chance to get one rapid test. No access whatsoever to PCR tests unless you're identified in a particular group of vulnerable people or workers. I do want to step back 1 second, though, and say that for the vast majority of small and medium-sized enterprises, it has been impossible for them to have anything that, at all that, in their toolbox to help understand where their workers are at in terms of possible COVID, carrying the COVID virus, like being exposed to and or shedding that virus. But I do know a lot of larger companies have done that work. A lot of larger companies do have programs in place where they are providing the testing and they're doing the monitoring and they're doing the feedback. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and to say that that's something that is valuable. Had those kinds of tools been available for everyone, not only employers, but also staff, then I think we might have had the opportunity to do exactly to create that would provide not only some of the protection, but also the data. And when it comes to the data, I mean, we've pretty much walked away from all of that. I mean, here we are in the worst, situation in terms of the impacts on our hospital system right now. And we have less information than we've had all the way along. We're not doing the PCR testing all the way with everyone. It's similar to what's happening in schools. Parents don't even know, are not even going to be told whether there's an outbreak or a couple of cases of COVID-19 in their classrooms yet, in their kids' classrooms. Yet they're going to know if kids have head lice in the classroom, which it really makes no sense whatsoever. And so, really going forward, if we're still in this, what we need to do is learn from those lessons. And yes, that means investment. And I know that people get worried about that, but you have to invest in capacity. So lab capacity is one of the things that we didn't ever invest in, and now we don't have the capacity for those PCR tests, even though the alarm bells were being rung from the very beginning that we needed to ramp up our lab capacity, but it wasn't done. And so I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes, but it also is where the lessons should have been and can be learned about how to tackle another wave if it comes, which we're hopeful is not going to come. But also, let's learn these lessons permanently. So we have called for a public inquiry into what's happened, both the good and the bad. Some things were done well. Let's talk about that. Let's make sure we learn the lessons of what was done well as where we fell down and need to improve. Because everybody is saying this is not the last pandemic. We saw the SARS outbreak and what that did. We need to, for Ontarians and for our own benefit, we need to make sure we learn those lessons.
Thank you very much for your response to that. You make some good points about lab capacity, other healthcare provider, HR capacity, internationally trained medical professionals. So we certainly have other options that we can explore as alternatives to always going to the default of locking down small businesses, spas, restaurants, retail, that again, data doesn't support that they're the source of the spread. Let's move more toward the growth of the economy. I think you know that Brampton is Ontario's fourth largest city. It's one of Canada's fastest growing. We are a logistics hub for Canada with the Brampton Intermodal Terminal, the Pearson Airport, 400 series highways. And goods movement employs thousands in our community. Trucking, distribution centers, software to support the logistics industry. About 40% of what's sold in stores across Canada makes its way through Brampton. The province has proposed the GTA West Corridor Highway, Highway 413, and they propose that to alleviate gridlock. We welcome about 16,000 newcomers to Brampton each year, and it's important that those newcomers get to work on time, get home on time for their soccer games, the kids' dance lessons. You've stated your opposition, your party has stated your opposition to the project quite publicly. And my question to you is, okay, with the growth that is occurring and the importance of this industry for Brampton and the entire innovation corridor, what's the alternative? What's the alternative to building Highway 413?
Well, thanks for that question, Todd. And you're correct. We've been pretty clear, as have a number of other municipalities in the area been on the same kind of page in that regard, because we're not against highways for any kind of political reason. I mean, it's not anything to do with ideology. We believe that highways should be built for safety purposes and for commute purposes. And what is evident from the work that's been done thus far on the 413 is it doesn't meet those criteria. Particularly, the government keeps saying it's going to deal with the gridlock. People are going to be able to commute faster, and in fact, the numbers don't bear that out. And so then the question becomes: so what will the solutions be? What are the solutions that are possible? And we know that there was a panel that brought forward some of those solutions. I think it was back in 2017. We need to look at those. We need to make sure that we are remembering that when you build this kind of infrastructure, it has impacts. And what we don't want to see is the loss of more farmland. What we don't want to see is more flooding. What we don't want to see is the environmental impacts, particularly when we know that the benefits that are being claimed simply aren't there. And so let's look at, for example, infrastructure that we have that is underutilized. And so one of the things that I think is important, current built infrastructure like the 407 can be utilized to try to take some of the pressure, the truck traffic pressure particularly, off the other 400 series highways. And so it's innovative solutions like this that I think will not only be important in the context of this particular highway and this particular need in terms of the gridlock, but I think we need to be thinking this way writ large when it comes to Ontario. And I think that we see Brampton, as you said, continuing to grow, which is great. We do know that that infrastructure in terms of movement of goods and people is extremely important. And I think there are some other things around LRT, for example, and other transit solutions with GO that we need to be looking at. But we also have to remember that that there are other parts of the infrastructure equation that we have not kept up with already in Brampton. And I'm thinking more of the soft infrastructure, like, for example, hospital investments. And so we might talk about that later. Maybe we won't. But we need to know that as we grow, we have an obligation as a government to meet the needs of growing populations, from one end to the other: education, schools, healthcare, and transportation, as well as others.
Thank you for that. It is challenging to prioritize many needed investments. You mentioned the importance of healthcare in Ontario, but particularly here in Brampton. You mentioned LRT, transit options, and GO service as well. Unfortunately, we've seen a recent reduction in the number of trains just this to start off 2022 along the Kitchener corridor, which Brampton's in the center. It is challenging. I think our business people understand the difficult prioritization that has to be done between transit, highway, and healthcare. And I just wanted to do a follow-up question. I'm glad to hear that there is no ideological opposition to highways in general. And I think your response was, what's been recommended is that we optimize the highways that we currently have. And some have suggested that that would be better optimizing the 407. The province doesn't own 407. It doesn't regain control of it until I think it's 2098. Can you help us understand how is there a pathway to leverage the 407 as a solution, and what is it possible, and what might it cost compared to the building of a new highway?
Thanks for that. I thought you were going to say, can you help us understand why we don't still have control over the 407? But that's not what I'm going to do, obviously. But look, I mean, so there's more than one way to peel an orange, I guess is the way to look at it. And so yes, you're absolutely correct. So let's do that homework. And I don't have those numbers in front of me at this point. I don't even know that those numbers have been really drilled down and gotten as granular as they need to be. But I can say that we absolutely can't take control back, and we don't have the resources to buy it back. But maybe there are ways to subsidize, if you will, or to create opportunities for truckers to access, or trucking companies to access that highway in a way that is not full cost, for example. And so those are some of the solutions that we're thinking about, and that we're hoping that we can start to flesh out.
Great, thank you so much. You mentioned earlier as well the balancing of priorities, LRT, healthcare as well, transit with highway. You might be familiar that Brampton is currently studying an extension of its LRT. The Huron-Ontario LRT is going from Port Credit, and it will be currently finishing at Steeles in Brampton, and the proposal is for it to continue to the GO station here in downtown Brampton. There are two proposals that City of Brampton is looking at. One on the surface, all the way, and another with a small tunneled portion. Now, the challenge is that the tunnel proposal could cost more than $1 billion compared to the surface one. You mentioned the challenge of competing priorities, healthcare, transit, highways, etc. Is your party, and if you were to form the next government, would you be able to commit to funding the Main Street LRT extension if elected? And what consideration would you give to the cost difference between those two options?
That's a really great question. And first of all, I will say yes. We are absolutely committed to making sure that extension of the LRT happens. I think that the piece around above ground, underground is something that is currently discussed and debated. One of the things that I've always believed is that it's really important to listen to the to the advice and the planning work and the vision of local municipalities. So I'm from Hamilton. Folks might or might not know that we have had an LRT in the works for many years. And when this government got elected, out of nowhere, they just canceled the LRT. And yet the transportation and urban planning around that LRT has been worked on for decades in the city of Hamilton. Similarly with the city of Brampton. I think we have to respect the transportation planning as well as the broader urban planning that's being done by the municipality. And when you look at the kind of short term, when you look at the cost, you have to weigh the costs against the benefits. And so, what are the benefits of underground? What are the benefits of above ground? What are what are the negatives? What are the problems with above ground? What are the problems with underground? And you have to extrapolate that into the future. It's just not an immediate thing. So if you up the investment for a particular in the short term, how does that then benefit or detract in the longer term? And so, I mean, businesses do this all the time, right? I mean, businesses invest. They invest in the futures of their company, and sometimes those investments are an immediate or short-term hit, but the long-term reward or the long-term return of those investments is what where the eye is kept on the prize. And so, those are the kinds of things that I think need to be fleshed out, if you will. Before a final decision is made in that regard.
Well, thank you very much for your response. And yes, that is the way that business people would approach it. We're happy to hear about your commitment to funding the LRT extension. And yes, with respect to which route option, you need to look at the business case, the return on the investment, how many people will benefit from it in their day-to-day, and both for the immediate but for the long term as well. So thank you very much for that response. Let's talk now continuing on the theme of transit, the GO service. There has been regular, leading up to the pandemic, there has been regular enhancements to the number of trains, the frequency of trains, and they're currently RFP for significant investment in the Kitchener line between Toronto and Waterloo region to support commuters all along and employers all along the corridor. What is your thoughts, and what kind of commitment can you bring forward to keep that vision toward more two-way, all-day GO service in Ontario and along that line?
Oh, it's absolutely necessary and important, and it kind of harkens back to the conversation we were having earlier, both about highway infrastructure and about LRT infrastructure. We need to make sure that when we are making these investments, that we get the maximum potential is realized in terms of those investments. And so, when it comes to Brampton, absolutely making sure that there is two-way frequent service back and forth to Kitchener, and that the businesses and the people who live in Brampton have access to easy and seamless opportunities to commute on that kind of infrastructure, because we all know that's another thing that'll take cars off the highways, obviously, but building that kind of infrastructure, making those kinds of investments, and not maximizing the potential, maximizing the opportunity is problematic. So I really do believe that Brampton deserves to be and should be, a significant, recipient of more service all day long, not just a couple of trains in the morning and a couple of trains in the evening. That's not what we need. Not only not what we need in terms of maximization, but it's not what we need in terms of the information corridor and the tech corridor and the maximizing of opportunities there.
Well, thank you for that response. I want to talk more about growth and economic growth. And one of the feeders or the critical success factors for Ontario companies to grow is access to energy and affordability of energy, electricity as well. Brampton businesses are serious about climate change, about protection of the environment, about energy conservation. And this question came up recently. We applaud the efforts to get more electric vehicles in Ontario, but we understand that if we're going to meet those electric vehicle targets, that it could put a demand on our energy system that would double the electricity required in order to meet those targets. And you have certainly been elected and are very familiar with the politics and policy of hydro in Ontario. Can we sustain this kind of pressure on the grid, or is there a role that not only the public sector but the private businesses can take on to manage this demand?
It's a great question, and I have actually had conversations with the various energy infrastructure companies, the public ones that we have here in Ontario, and asked that very question, and was assured that there's two sides to the coin. Absolutely, there is going to be a higher demand, but the other piece is making sure that we're making the investments to reduce the waste of energy that we currently have. So we've put out a plan called the Green New Democratic Deal. We put it out about a year ago now, and in fact, we had started that work on that plan for probably about 3.5 years ago, right? Certainly shortly after the last election, and we engaged a lot of business folks, both folks in the energy sector, but also in the distribution sector, but also large manufacturers, the smaller companies. We really did do a lot of hard work, and if anybody who might be watching this that helped us with that work, I want to extend my gratitude, because we really needed your insights and your your analysis and your criticisms around what we were thinking about, and we, as a result, came up with a really great plan. I also want to say that we were going to introduce it to the public just before the pandemic hit, and decided that the world is going to turn upside down, and really it wasn't a smart thing to do that until we understood where things were going with the pandemic. So we did release it a little while back, because one of the things we wanted to add into our plan is a real vision around the economy, around the green economy and the opportunity that shifting to a green economy would bring. So our plan includes a number of things: a significant, massive retrofit program, starting with government and ending with helping with private individuals as well as businesses with that massive retrofit program for energy efficiency initiatives. Massive investment in some of the things we've already been talking about, in transit systems, and in greening those transit systems. So the GO system, for example, municipal transit systems. I wish I had it right in front of me. I could rail off all of the deadlines that we have to achieve some of these things. One of the other things which we didn't talk about earlier in talking about transit is that the real acknowledgement and requirement to get serious about ensuring that municipalities aren't going it alone in the cost of transit. So both in terms of, as we're talking about the greening of these transit systems, they need the help of the provincial government to achieve that. But I've said for a very long time, like places like New York City, like many places in Europe, the provincial or state order of government needs to be at the table in terms of helping with the operating costs of these transit systems. So that's in our Green New Democratic Deal. So there's both the investment in the infrastructure in terms of the generation of greener electricity, but there's also the shifting of the economy into ensuring that we are not burning up a lot of energy in some of the day-to-day things that we're doing.
Yeah, very good, very good. I think we're coming close to the end of our conversation. I have to ask a question about the next election. We're a little less than 6 months away. I'm just going to flag to our team and to our audience, if there are questions for the leader, we might be able to take one or two from the audience as well. If my team can get it up in the comments here, we may have one more question after this one. But let me ask a question about the upcoming election. You're running to be premier. You now lead the largest official opposition in the province's history in a generation. What's your pathway to the government side of the House? And what role does Brampton and its 5 ridings play in that pathway?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for opening in that way with the question, because absolutely that's the job I have is one that's not only important as the official opposition, but also important in terms of experience and understanding of how this place here, Queen's Park, works and how government works. And again, hearkening back to the beginning of our conversation, how important it is to make sure that that the complexities of a province of our size are understood and are valued, and that's certainly something, a place that I come from. Let's put it that way. But yes, I am running for premier. We have 40 MPPs right now in the legislature who have now got significant experience. Some of them, about half, have been there for 2 terms, and some of them have been there for 3 terms. And so we really do have a bench depth, if you want to call it that, in terms of experience, which is extremely important when you're taking the reins of a province of this size and complexity, as I've mentioned. But we also have MPPs sitting at our table, the official opposition table, who represent literally every type of riding in every geographical area of our province, which is also extremely important because our province is so diverse and complex. And so we have MPPs from Northern Ontario, we have MPPs from Southwestern Ontario, we have MPPs from suburban Ontario, from the GTA, from Brampton, Scarborough, from downtowns, so Hamilton, Toronto, Ottawa, London, Windsor. So we really do have MPPs that represent all kinds of different types of ridings. Rural Ontario, Essex is a riding that we've been representing for some time now. Some of our northern MPPs, yes, they're north, but they're also small towns, and they're rural, and they're agricultural. And so we do have all of that. And then we have 50% women as MPPs. Our 40 MPPs are 50% women. And we have young people. And we have people who are older folks. And we have people that are from the LGBTQ plus community. And we have MPPs that are, we have the first First Nations MPP ever to be elected to the Ontario legislature. And why that's important is because when we have our conversations, when we have our discussions, when we put our policy planks out there, whether it's the Green New Democratic Deal, whether it's our plan for housing for everyone, whether it's our plans around seniors care, seniors deserve the best in Ontario, those platform planks which then become public policy when you form government are informed by those voices. And that's what Ontario needs. We need to pull together. We have an amazing future ahead of us, but we have some work to do, particularly coming out of hopefully the last phases of COVID. We have some work to do to pull together, to build that Ontario together. And we can't do it, and we won't do it by divisiveness and by fighting. We need to do it by joining together, by respecting and acknowledging everything that everyone brings to this effort to rebuild Ontario better. I know that's a cliche. It sounds like a cliche these days, but that's really what we need to do. And we can't do it without everyone being part of that. And so I'm excited. Really, I am. You're right. It's very short time frame between now and the campaign. Ontarians have a really big decision to make. And I'm certainly looking forward to showing them that we can do a lot better than where we are now. But it takes all of us to do that.
Thank you, and I think it's important for our business people in Brampton to listen to your response and to appreciate that the diversity of your caucus, age, geography, gender, orientation, etc. So thanks so much for that. You mentioned too the importance of working together. My goodness, we all need to come together after these 22 months. Let me ask a follow-up question, though, on the political side. What about a minority government? Do you see a scenario, a working together, as you say, that would allow progressive conservatives and NDP to lead a minority government?
Well, I have certainly said for some time now that I would not support a Doug Ford government. We are just too far apart on too many things. I really have not had any confidence or respect in the way that Mr. Ford has run this province as premier. So I've said very clearly I'm not prepared to do that. Having said that, if we have a minority government, I would certainly invite others to get behind the priorities that New Democrats have and start delivering for Ontarians.
Very good. This will be the last question. Thank you so much for your fulsome responses and handling just a wide array of topics today. This question from our audience is about something you started off your introductory remarks about good jobs and more affordable life. I believe is central to your belief. Talk to us about housing, affordable housing, and in particular, housing for international students. We have quite a few here in Brampton, and post-secondary is growing with Sheridan and Algoma and Ryerson. What could we expect from your government in terms of housing affordability, and particularly that for students?
It's a really great question, Todd, and I know that there are some really tragic stories that unfold in Brampton. I've heard some horror stories about what some international students are facing in terms of their housing situation, and in terms of what they're expected to do to try to keep a roof over their head. If we want the best and the brightest in the world to come to Ontario and to study here and hopefully to stay here and to share their talents and their gifts and their experiences with us to help build our province, the very least we should be doing is making sure that their experience here as students is one that's that provides some dignity, some quality of life in terms of their housing needs, and some just some respect for them as human beings, and acknowledgement of their vulnerability as young people. And there's a lot that we can and need to do. Certainly part of our housing plan speaks to making sure that we have housing solutions that are affordable, and that includes traditional affordable housing, as well as social housing, for example, with supports, but it also includes working with municipalities to make sure that that we are helping to bring solutions that respond to the crisis in housing that we now have. I know municipalities are struggling in some cases around issues like landlord licensing. I know that there are concerns around capacity at the municipal level to do inspections and to create that sense of safety and security around houses that have become places where, in some cases, 20 or more young people are living. Those solutions need to be addressed, or those problems need to be addressed, and there are solutions. But I have to say, I firmly believe this, having been a municipal councillor myself. We know that the municipal order of government does not have the financial resources to solve these problems on their own. And so as a province, if we are going to benefit from these international students coming to study here, we then have to be part of the solutions to what they're facing right now. And so that's both on the on the ongoing regulatory side, I guess you will, if you will, but also on the solution side around how do we provide the infrastructure, back to that word, but the housing infrastructure to support them. And I think if we don't do that, we risk becoming a jurisdiction that becomes one with a bad reputation internationally around how we treat our international students, and that will be something that we can't overcome easily. So let's get this problem right now. Let's start putting in place these solutions and acknowledge that it's not just something we turn away from at the provincial level and leave it up to the municipalities to deal with.
Well, thank you again very much for that fulsome response, and I will hand things back now to the chair of the Brampton Board of Trade, Donna Fagan-Pascal, to close. I just want to say thank you to Andrea Horwath, the leader of the official opposition and NDP Party of Ontario. Thank you for this wide-ranging conversation, fulsome responses. We appreciated your time very, very much.
My pleasure.
My pleasure.
And thank you to MPP Andrea Horwath for your time today, and to Daniel Salvatore from CN Rail for doing our introduction. I want to thank CN Rail for being our presenting sponsor and for their many supportive efforts in helping businesses get goods to market and their generous support of many Brampton Board of Trade programs that drive our economy. Two of our signature events are coming up in the next few months that I would love to tell you more about them. I would like to ask that join us on February 8th for our annual State of the City, where you'll hear from community leaders, the city's mayor, and the chair of the Brampton Board of Trade, yours truly. We will share perspectives on Brampton's future from both a public sector and a private sector point of view. We'll also show appreciation to the Peel Region's finest and as awarding the Peel Region Police Service Award. We will also celebrate International Women's Day by coming together to be inspired and encouraged while hearing the stories of female leaders in our community at our annual event in March. Join us on March 2nd to hear from myself, yours truly, where we'll be awarding the Naseem Samani Memorial Leadership Award of Excellence to Dr. Janet Morrison, the President and Vice Chancellor of Sheridan College. As we wrap up today, I'd like to invite you to stay and network. On the left side of your screen, you will see icons for the expo to explore. The networking icon will take you to one-on-one networking, and sessions icon will take you into group discussions with fellow attendees. Stay, chat, and build your network. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today.